On July 29, 2026, the industrial coast of Egypt suffered a critical breach. At Damietta port, the target was the backbone of regional energy. A suicide drone impacted the Energos Winter, an American-owned floating storage and regasification unit, immediately igniting a fire that spread to the neighboring LNG carrier, the Gaslog Salem. What happened next was a collision of two opposing realities: the physical resilience of modern maritime engineering and the severe vulnerability of global supply chains. A single tactical strike on this Mediterranean choke point simultaneously jeopardized Egypt's electrical grid and choked off a primary alternative gas route for Europe. To understand why the port didn't completely vanish, we have to look at what didn't happen. An external fire boiling a liquid gas payload creates a boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion, or BLEV. It levels city blocks. This 3D cross-section reveals why the Energos Winter survived. Its internal architecture relies on a membrane containment system known as GTT No96-2. The hull is lined with dual layers of an ultra-thin metallic alloy called Invar, backed by reinforced polyurethane foam. Invar is just 0.7 millimeters thick, but it possesses a near-zero thermal expansion rate. Even as flames scorched the outer hull, the intense heat could not bridge this gap to reach the payload, which sits at negative 162 degrees Celsius. The gas boil-off rate stayed at a fractional 0.085% a day. Thermal insulation is only half the defense. The other half is mechanical isolation, governed by emergency shutdown, or ESD, systems, designed by engineering firms like Trelleborg and Claw LNG. This diagram illustrates the ESD-1 protocol. When the drone struck, it disrupted the moorings. As the two burning vessels drifted just 5 meters apart, internal sensors detected the movement and instantly shut down the massive transfer pumps, closing the pipeline valves. 2 meters later, at the 7-meter mark, ESD-2 engaged. The physical transfer hoses connecting the ships executed a dry mechanical brake. They detached and sealed automatically, cutting off the flow of liquid gas before the hoses could stretch and rupture. Together, that ultra-thin thermal barrier and automated mechanical severance starved the fire of new fuel. That precise sequence of engineering is the only reason the adjacent sea gas liquefaction complex didn't ignite. The weapon that tested those defenses leaves a distinct signature. Intelligence assessments and physical wreckage point to an Iranian-designed suicide drone. This map outlines the operational ranges of the suspected drone models. Systems like the Shahed-136, Arash, and Kaman-22 operate on navigation systems capable of covering up to 2,000 kilometers from launch sites across the Middle East. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps now manufactures an estimated 400 of these drones every day. The tactic is numerical flooding. Launch in cheap, high-volume swarms to saturate and bypass advanced air defense networks. This strike was telegraphed. Just 48 hours earlier, Iranian state television broadcast a tactical map detailing targets for retaliation against Western interests. The Damietta LNG terminal was explicitly marked, identified on air as a vital gateway for European gas. The timeline confirms a coordinated front. The Damietta strike occurred in the exact same operational window as joint US-Saudi strikes against proxy forces in Iraq, and a Ukrainian strike on an Iranian vessel in the Caspian Sea. By hitting Damietta alongside those engagements, the attacking forces proved they can project power well outside traditional maritime choke points. The Mediterranean energy grid is now an active combat zone. The global financial markets reacted in hours. The international group of P&I clubs, which underwrites most of the global commercial fleet, directed its reinsurers to cancel war risk coverage for the region. This maritime tracking map shows the immediate fallout. Stripped of standard insurance, shippers were forced to seek specialized buyback facilities, requiring premiums up to $200 million. At least 13 LNG carriers executed abrupt U-turns, abandoning their eastern routes. Mega carriers like Hapag-Lloyd and CMA-CGM froze new bookings for the Middle East and implemented massive emergency surcharges to cover the cost of rerouting around the Cape of Good Hope. For Egypt, the timing is completely disastrous. Facing severe economic pressure, Cairo has rapidly shifted from a gas exporter to a heavy importer, relying on a rented fleet of floating storage and regasification units to keep its grid alive. To meet this demand, Egypt relies on imports from Israeli offshore fields like Leviathan and Tamar, piped in through the Ashkelon and EMG networks. This energy pact contains a severe asymmetry. Israel can suspend gas exports during security crises without causing a single domestic power outage. But the moment pipeline pressure drops, Egypt loses the margin of error for its electrical grid. A disruption forces Cairo to enact rolling blackouts and shut down critical petrochemical and fertilizer plants. This unbalanced reliance makes static infrastructure an ideal pressure point. Hostile actors can weaponize a single ship to squeeze Egyptian domestic stability and Israeli export revenues at the exact same time. Damietta highlights a severe paradox in modern infrastructure. We have perfected the micro-engineering required to stop a localized explosion, but we completely lack the macro strategy to protect the assets themselves from being hit. The expansion of the target map into the eastern Mediterranean bakes heavy war risk premiums directly into global energy prices. It acts as a permanent tax on the supply chain. Relying on diversified supply routes or backup pipelines is no longer an adequate defense. The baseline cost of operating critical energy infrastructure must now increase. Tactical air defense systems, specifically anti-drone jammers and point defense networks, must transition from military budgets to the standard operational expenditure of maritime logistics.